damn it. There we go. Alright. So I am doing a live stream of Walter White from Breaking Bad. I'm going to talk about kind of some of the process and technique here. I'm going to go over my colors on my palette. So we'll start from left to go right around. And on my YouTube stream, you can't really see it because right now I've only got one camera set up. I'm going to be changing that in the future. So I'll talk about it like this. I'll set it up right here so everybody can see it. Yep, that was not what I wanted to do. Screw up number one. All right. So this is Paynes gray, and I have Portland gray medium and light, Naples yellow, chromium oxide green, yellow ochre, cadmium red light, a bright red, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, raw umber, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, indigo blue, and viridian hue. So those are the main colors I'll be using today as I do this portrait. I'm doing a portrait of Walter White from the pilot episode. And about 20 minutes into the show, where he gets told that he's got cancer, inoperable lung cancer. And to be honest, this is probably going to be one of the more difficult kind of portraits to do because it's straight on face shot. And the reason it's difficult is there's just not a lot of silhouette things to jump on, like the shapes of the nose and the eyes, or the profile of the face. Like 3/4 views are usually somewhat easier to approach with portrait painting. The other thing I wanted to try to capture with this is some of the emotion that's in that scene. It's real subtle lighting, so this may or may not work out very well. So, we'll figure that out as we go along. I hope you all can hear me. See what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of this white canvas. I'm going to use some raw umber, a little bit of burnt umber. I'm going to thin it down with some odorless mineral spirit, which is what I use to kind of clean my brushes and thin my paint down. So I just brush that crap on there. And the thinner you use it, the more you thin it down, the more it's going to run like watercolors. But this is mainly just to get rid of this canvas, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use this as the basis for setting up our composition. So instead of trying to draw a face out with a bunch of lines, I'm going to wipe it out with a rag, with a cotton rag, which you can get at Home Depot. You can get bags of them, like painting rags and whatnot. So I find that this sort of approach to painting is much more efficient than trying to draw out the edges of things. So here's like the painting rags that I'm using. I don't know why they cut them up so small in this bag, but that's what we got. So all right, I know you can't see my reference, so it's kind of hard for me to like maneuver everything around. Eventually I'm going to try to get a setup to where I can show this on a screen along with what I'm doing in the painting. But until then, we'll just do what we got. So I'm just going to wipe out the shape of the head. Like that. All right. And we're done. So the next thing to do is to wipe out the basic shapes of his face, and I start with the hairlines, you know, the forehead. His jaw. So if any of you have been to any of my shows where I do the live demo portraits from a live model, this is the same way I approach it. I actually think it's probably easier to work from live models because you can walk around and see what you're looking at, and when somebody's alive there, it's just, I don't know, it's just easier to see what you're looking at. Working from a photograph tends to flatten things out. So I've got like 3 or 4 photographs that I'm working from the scene of the show, and his expression kind of subtly changes quite a few times, and so what I'm wanting to do is use all of those as a reference, and I'm going to try to aim for this emotional quality that's in the scene of that show. And Bryan Cranston is a really fantastic actor, in my opinion, and he plays this role amongst any other role he plays like just it's just insane how all the subtle things he does acting wise. I mean, I'm not an actor, I don't know, but I couldn't pull it off. Alright, so now I'm going to go and just sort of try to solidify some of this, like just block in the hair shapes. I'm going to try to do a demo like this on a weekly basis on Fridays, and doing different people, different subject matters. We'll see. We're thinking about doing a painting of Edward Shackleton next week, which is a explorer to the South Pole. Well, never made it. He's famous for surviving, him and his crew surviving the South Pole. So they didn't make it, and they got stuck on the ice and really got screwed up. Almost all died. All right, so now what I'm going to do, let's see. All right. So now I'm going to block in just some more basic shapes and colors of the face. Going to use a burnt sienna and a Paynes gray. I really like using these gray tones to create the flesh tones here. It's a little too dark. Add a little bit of cadmium red light into that. Maybe some of this deep red here. This is one of those things where, again, it's not really important that you get really exact placement of everything. We're going to be pushing and pulling this around quite a bit. So I just want to lay in the color here. So I'm not going to worry about his chin line too much. There's a little bit of that lip right there. Okay. Now I'm going to move. Okay, I'm going to go up here and adjust that a little bit. So there's sort of a color theme that goes on in the show, and it has a lot of warms in the shadows and a lot of greens in the lights. So we're going to play up on that sort of palette, that little color combo. So I got this sort of yellow green. It's like I got it from Dick Blick. It's one of their, not one of their fancier brands, but it's kind of like a student grade paint, I think, but it has this really nice warm texture to it. So I'm going to use that to block in some of this tone right here. Just going to go down the nose, like that. Gonna hit the chin right there. Let's see, he's got this sort of, all right. So this tone under the, he's got his mustache right here. So we're gonna sort of scrub that in a little bit. Here's where his other eye is. So this light source in this painting is kind of coming from this angle over here. And one of the tricks of the stumbling blocks of doing portraits is to get caught up in a bunch of features, like facial features, and not really being paying attention to the whole, the overall thing, the overall structure of the face. So a face isn't just a bunch of facial features. Obviously, they all kind of have to coordinate together. So if you focus on one eye without thinking about how it's interacting with the rest of the face, you're going to have lots of things that look right, but they're disjointed. They're not working together as the whole. So that's one of the benefits of approaching it this way, is you kind of start focusing on just the overall shapes of things. Let's make that a little bit more, damn it, more green. All right, so I really like these Portland grays from Gamblin. They are really nice, actually, for flesh tones. So again, I'm just quickly getting some color in here, and we will come back and adjust all this stuff shortly. Make sure everything's looking right. But if you don't get the first part of the portrait down, like, you know, if you don't get the composition or the drawing or the structure down, no amount of details is going to really make anything better. So if something's not working, it's best to get a bigger brush and start hammering away at it. You know, chop it down. Okay, I'm going to use some Indigo Blue with this burnt umber to hit some of the darker tones up in his hair up here. Got this really weird part. This is the part of the show before he turns completely insane. Still looks kind of like a regular guy almost. He's got a really square head. All right. There we go. And I'm going to take some of this raw umber and this yellow ochre and just kind of block in his shoulder line. So one of the other things about the first part of this painting is to just get paint all over the entire thing. Just start, you know, cover the entire canvas. It does a couple of things. It forces you to not get caught up in small details, which can be a waste of time if you have to then go and paint them over later. It also helps to really establish the overall palette structure. And what I mean by that is the colors that you're going to use for the painting. So I'm taking this color I mixed for his shirt, this sort of indigo blue, and I'm bringing that into his part of his face. I'm going to take some Aliziran Crimson and warm that up a little bit. And now I'm going to, oops, that's kind of too brown. All right. Let's go back. Again, focusing on shape rather than detail, just outlining where, you can see I'm using a really kind of big flat brush on this. As I go in and I just sort of almost sculpting things out. Like I said, I can always come back in for detail later. Alright, so I'm going to just chin up here a little bit. And so, as I don't do a lot of these live streams, I don't really have it set up to view comments. I don't know if there's things that you guys have questions about, feel free to ask them. I probably won't be able to get to them until after I'm done with the stream. Alright, so let's make a background color here. I'm going to use yellow ochre and Paynes gray. That looks pretty good. I'm going to use a bigger brush. I'm going to go back and I always suggest using the biggest brush you can get away with. Again, it keeps you from, it's faster, it keeps you from getting caught up in minutia too much. And it just the way I do it. So this is all going to be edge relationships here. So I'm going to use a little bit of this. I have some medium here that I use, which is mostly linseed oil with some liquin inside of it. And often I mix it up, but I haven't mixed this up, so that all the really liquidy stuff is liquin, or is linseed oil. And I try to use this sparingly, even though I have a whole buttload of it here. But as you can see, it helps to really make that paint flow much smoother. Alright, so I'm looking at the shape of his face. I'm going to keep on building this out right here. This may take a bit of pushing and pulling before you get something that really starts to feel right. So don't get too discouraged if something doesn't look right away. It's one of the nice things about doing it this way is it just, you got lots of room to kind of play around. As you don't have to worry about making mistakes. In fact, I would suggest that you don't worry about making mistakes. And if you're worried about making mistakes, try to make mistakes. See how far you can push things. I mean, there's nothing to lose here. It's just a painting. So like, even if we don't get something at the end of this little session that looks quite right, you can always come back later and screw it up even more. In fact, a lot of my best paintings have been over the top of other paintings that didn't work out. Alright, so let's go over this side. Let's just get this thing covered. So what I'm using here is a house painting brush, and it's one of the nicer ones. You can get them at Home Depot, but I like the way that it holds a lot of paint. Let's see, and you can just kind of go to town. They're really they last quite a while too, and I'm pretty rough with brushes for the most part. All right, Walter White. Man, I remember when the show came out, I used to binge watch it all. It's one of my favorite shows, and so I just started watching it again. I thought, you know what, this might be fun to do. And you know, I didn't necessarily pick out the most famous image of him as later in the show, so I thought I'll start with this Mr. Innocent part of Walter White when he was just a young lad. just a high school chemistry teacher, didn't know what he was doing, just plowing through life. Being humiliated at the car wash, you know. Regular guy. Alright, so we'll worry about that later. Yeah, that looks like crap. I'll worry about it now. Alright. Alright, so what's not working? Okay, so let's play around on the forehead a little bit. So there we go. All right. Let's see here. All right, so there's some other things that aren't working with this yet. That. Come back to the other side of the head. And I'm going to take a little bit of this burnt sienna, some of that bright red, and some more of the indigo blue. The indigo blue is a really nice, dark, almost blackish blue, and it's really great for doing flesh tones in the shadows, especially. So like one of the colors I like to use, like one of the combinations of colors I like to use in making flesh tones is I like to use complementary colors when I can. Okay, let's see what I can do here. And so the oranges and the blues, or like the cadmium red lights, and you can use cobalt blue or ultramarine blue, but those are very saturated colors, and so to get a really nice neutral tone out of it, you end up having to mix other like white or something with it. And as you notice on my palette, I don't have white. It's just I don't have anything really against it, but I try to, for whatever reason, use that as one of my constraints. It's to not use white and try to keep the value structure all within this. The lightest tone I have would be like this Naples yellow or this Portland gray light. And white tends to make things chalky, at least the way that I use them. So feel free to use white if you want, but you know, I don't use black very often either. So I just like to make things hard for myself for some reason. It's part of what I do. I find though that if you do put some sort of palette constraints, like the simpler your palette is, the less decisions you have to make about what to do. So like, I try to keep things as simple as I can. So although I have a bunch of colors here, I may not even use most of them, but alright, so I'm trying to, yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, what do I want to do here? I want to bring that down. Alright, so I'm continuing just to hit some indications of shapes of things. Alright, so I want to continue to bring this eyebrow and this shape of his eye over here and the shadows up and over like that. I'm going to check real quick to make sure the stream's still working, so I'm not here talking to myself like an idiot. Alright, that's working. Alright, let's see what we got. Okay, let's go back to let's get back. Alright, so I'm going to hit some of these tones right here. So continuing just to kind of stab at this thing here. Indicating some of these other little things in his face, give me little road maps that, you know, I can always pull them back if I need to, or change them later. So I often will work for hours on a little portrait like this, and then at the last second just kind of take a sledgehammer of a brush to it and just change all kinds of things all at once, really brashly, and that's usually what pulls it together. It's kind of funny. All this delicate, sort of careful decision making, and I just go at it with like reckless abandon at the end. It's like when you, I don't know if you ever played blackjacks or something at in Vegas. Sit around, you play, and then you get bored, and you just bet all or everything all at once. And usually you lose. It's kind of like how I do it. Except there's no, you know, there's no real losing here. Okay. I'm going to start just kind of laying where his eyes are. So painting is basically drawing. So what we're doing here is we're, you know, not coloring in things, we're drawing things in with shapes and paint. And maybe that's obvious. So, but I like to do that too. I like to point out the obvious, so you have to bear with me on that. So, I'm still doing that. Okay, got this. Looks like my cat is woken up from his slumber, so he's probably gonna come up and brush up against all my tripods and knock my cameras off, because he likes to screw with me that way. Hey, buddy. Yep. I know. Alright, so let's go back to his hair a little bit. Start. So he's got some of this color. I've got these highlights in his hair, and I'm using the same sort of tone that I used for the background. So what's going on with his hair is all this reflected light. I'm just going to keep that somewhat simple for now. I'm going to go back at, so I'm using for the shadows, like when I want to go under right here, I'm just using a raw umber. So most of what I'm doing is a lot of gray and earth tones, and then hitting it with some color. So the color will look like color if you have enough of these gray tones to compare it to. So if you're having trouble getting the color to look bright enough, it's probably because you have too much bright colors and not enough gray tones going on in your painting. At least that's what I've come to find out. If you want something to look more blue, use a lot more red, etc. You know, complementary colors, that sort of thing. Okay. So then I'm going to use, so on this side he's got a little bit warmer tones from a different light source or something. I don't know what's going on. So I'm using raw sienna for that over here. I'm going to go back to this indigo blue and hit this raw sienna, and that makes a really rich, dark brownish color. Alright, so let's do it like that. Alright, so I'm going to come back, so yellow ochre, hit that color, and I'm going to bring the shoulder up a little bit. And then I'm going to use this yellow ochre, take some of this Portland gray medium, and I'm going to need a little bit more. How about Portland gray dark? Let's try that. And then let's mix a little bit of raw umber with it to darken it up a little bit. More of that raw, more of that yellow ochre. That's a little better. How about just straight up raw? Yeah, that looks even better. Alright, so let's go back to the other side of the shirt over here. I'm using this Portland gray medium, a little bit of yellow ochre. Hitting it down like that. Let's mix it with some of this Paynes gray, see what that does. And then let's hit the sort of highlight of his shirt over here, his jacket, whatever he's wearing, stupid jacket he's wearing. Let's do that. There we go. Alright, starting to kind of look like him a little bit. I like this gray. How's that going to work over here? Actually, it looks pretty nice. Oops. Okay, actually I kind of like this Portland gray mixture with this yellow ochre, so I'm going to stick with that for a little bit into his face, see how that works. Looks alright. How about some of this yellow green? Maybe. But as you can see, it's starting to kind of look a little bit like him. So the idea is you work from these big shapes and these big things, and you narrow it down into the likeness and the other details of the portrait. And what I like to aim for when I'm doing this is I want to capture that emotion that's in a face, like they're alive. And I don't know how to explain to do that, other than, first of all, you have to start being able to recognize those things when you. I probably would suggest that you do a lot of drawing of people who aren't posing for drawings. You know, so like you want to paint people who are, you know, sitting around at coffee shops or stuff like that. Just look in your sketchbook. That seems to be a good way to like train yourself to pay attention to what you're drawing and translate it without having to copy things. It's just one of the difficulties of painting from a reference photo is that you can get bogged down on trying to copy the photo. So for like this one, I have 3 separate photos from the same scene here that I'm working from. I actually screen captured like probably 8 or 9 of them, and then I take things from each one that I think are interesting and use that as a way of sort of figuring out what I want to put into the painting, what I want to leave out. Alright, so just going back into this mixture I have with some of this indigo blue and red colors. Hit up that. Alright, so what's working, what's not working? Okay, this isn't working up here. Okay, so we continue to that. Bryan Cranston has this really expressive forehead too, so let's try to capture some of that if we can. The other thing to remember about this is this is a form in 3 dimensions, and so rather than trying to capture wrinkles, we got to remember that if you've ever done the painting of the ball exercise where you have a light on a source and then it's casting a shadow and you're trying to render that sphere, it's the same sort of thing with what's going on here. So there's a shape to this forehead that we've got to capture on top of everything else. So if you want to start thinking about it that way, sometimes it can help inform what the brush strokes should be, what direction they should be, how to change your value structure from one stroke to the other. And sometimes it takes a little bit of warm up to kind of figure out where to go with that. Alright, so I'm just going to continue with that for a bit. Alright. Going to mix up some more of this. I'm going to do some Cadmium Red Light and some Paynes Gray here. I'm just going to like kind of darken in this whole thing right here. I'm going to bring that over here. Actually, that's not really working, so let's... Sometimes it just takes some playing around till you get the right sort of shapes in there. That's not really working that great. So let's see here. So I'm just going to continue to push and pull on this. Hopefully it doesn't look too much like Tom Selleck. Damn it. I just changed this to Tom Selleck. Let's see here. So some of this I'm just taking a mixture of crap that's already on my easel, or my palette right here, and using that to just mix some of these darker tones up. And start blending things together that need to be blended together. So I find that often blending the edges together of things, like instead of trying to delineate this hair and this ear, I might just make that one shape that there's not a real solid definition of where one begins and where the other ends. Because what happens is our eyes tend to fill in details that are missing. You can get away with that a little bit. Okay, I see what's... No, I might get a bigger brush here. And sometimes it's the outside shapes of the head aren't working very well. So I'm going to go back to this background mixture that I was using. Now, if I remember what it was, we'll figure it out. I think it was Paynes gray and yellow ochre. Alright, so this needs to change right here somehow. That's not right. Can't go like that. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to take my own advice, just use a bigger brush for a bit. All right. This cadmium red light in here. I'm going to mix in some of this chromium green oxide, which is like kind of a nice grass green, I would say. It's a little bit too dark. All right, play around with that. Let's see. So like I was saying before, I'm coming in and using some of these just bigger brush strokes and trying to refine things by shape and how the shapes relate to each other. I'm going to borrow some of this ultramarine blue. Go in here. Okay. Actually, I do not like that. Yeah, just the cat. He does not approve. Now it's looking like crap. And that's happens. So let's see here. So one of the things I like to do when I'm doing like a crease between the lips is I'll use Aliziran Crimson. That warm tone really looks nice. So let's come back. Warm that up a bit. So it often takes more than an hour to really nail something. So this is looking kind of rough right now, but it's, you know, setting us on the path, I think, to get something that looks right eventually. Not really excited about how it's turning out, to be honest, but I mean, right now it just means I got a lot more surgery to do on it later. It's like I always wrestle it back into control at some point. I don't know if it's going to happen during this live stream or not. We'll take another approach. Like I said, it's one of the difficulties about doing a straight-on portrait is it can be difficult to get to, because there's not a lot of, I mean, all I have is really the outside shape of his head to help really define this thing. So I want to go back into this over here. When you're working on these things, don't be afraid to like paint over things and change things, and you know, don't get frustrated if it doesn't work right away. It's not really, it's nothing that can't be fixed. Let's see here. Go over here and touch up his hair. So I'm going to continue to just refine this stuff over here. That shadow. Looks like I got the shape of his head kind of all wrong. Doing this. I'm just going to keep toying around with this. Let's see here. Move some of this. Cadmium Red Light. Tone. Let's go with that with a bit of that yellow color I got. All right. So, all right, just going to continue to screw around with that. Let's see here, let's get some of that red and the green. Get a couple of little things that might help. Let's see. just continuing to play around with that, this and that. Okay. So I'll probably post this online after I finish it. So I plan on doing a live stream for about an hour today, so we're almost up on that hour. If you guys have any questions, ideas or anything, feel free to comment on this post. I'll try to take some time to go and answer some of those questions when I'm done working on this thing for a bit. All right, so I think I'm getting to a point where I'm just gonna like take a break from it and then come back to it with a fresh mind. But you can kind of see where it's headed. Gives you an idea of how to approach this. Don't be too intimidated about doing these things yourself. In fact, if you go at it with the attitude that you don't care if you screw it up, then you're more likely to do something that's interesting anyway. I hope you guys like this. Like I said, I'm going to try to do this on a more frequent basis, especially if I think that people are getting something out of it. I really appreciate everybody who's supported my art over the years, and if there's technical questions you want me to address in another painting, another time, hit me up with those things too. So I don't know what exactly people are stuck with, like technical things, you know, anything on this creative side. I'd be happy to try to like give you my answers to it. You know, I'm not the end all be all, of course, but I've been doing this for a while, so I have a few ideas about how to make things work. Actually, this is not too bad. It's starting to come together now that I'm about ready to say I'm done. Now it's like, yeah, maybe I'll start coming together a little bit. Make me want to stay around a little bit longer and keep running my mouth and whatnot. But I think I'm going to call this, do one little touch up. I think one little touch here is going to make that look. No, maybe not. So yeah, I'm going to take a break from this for a bit, and I'll post the finished painting when I get it finished. I might take another probably. Usually after this point, it's probably about, could be another 2 hours or so to finish it. Like, a lot of the time, these paintings, they come together very quick in the first hour. Lots of things happen in the first hour of the making of the painting. And then the rest of it takes a lot longer, all the little needling and details and stuff. But like I was saying, I always focus on trying to get the overall thing correct first. So, all right, I think that's about. I keep saying that, and I keep working on some more stuff. There's probably nobody even watching anymore. I don't know what's going on. I'm just talking to myself as if people are watching. It's kind of weird trying to explain everything as you're doing it to your cat, basically, and just assuming people are paying attention or checking in on it. Alright, I think that's pretty close. We'll call that good for right now. Like I said, please comment or questions in the comments, and I will do my best to answer them a little bit later. And then I'm going to try to do this again next week. I'm going to try to do it on Fridays at 3 p.m. And I'm keeping it as portraits, keeps it simple. When I get this going and it gets into more of a rhythm, I may be able to post the palette choices I'm going to use first. So if anybody wants to follow along, they can. Maybe also posting some of the reference that I'm using. So if you want to use the same reference, you can do that too. And then we can all paint together on Fridays at 3, doing a little portrait. All right, guys. Thanks for checking in. And I'll check you later.